Maputo Land Travel, thanks for joining us again. I'm going to try and get Mike back on the line. He's changed phones, so fingers crossed we'll be able to get him back online. I'm really keen to learn more about what they do because I don't have a clear idea either. So thanks guys for jumping on board again, and let's see if we can get these guys back online. Um, Give us 1 second. Guys, if you have questions as well, please don't hesitate to throw them our way. We'll definitely make time to answer them either at the end or if they're relevant while we're talking about a particular subject right then and there. Mikey, you're back.
Hello. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Mic check. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's actually sounding a lot better, my friend. So let's see if we can crack on, guys. For those of you who didn't hear the introduction, Mike is a qualified marine biologist and a conservationist. He's also a qualified scuba diving instructor, and he's based in my local city, Cape Town. And we're going to be chatting to him about an organization he's founded, CapeRadd, together with a close friend and his wife, Jessie. So, Mike, we were chatting a little bit about your two-tiered approach at CapeRadd. Maybe we can pick it up from there, and I feel like most of the viewers actually wouldn't have missed anything.
Yeah, sure. I just appreciating the picture of my pre-COVID lockdown haircut.
No, I feel you. The haircut you're seeing of mine at the moment was done by my wife. We've also had to make a plan because it was starting to look a little disheveled.
Dangerous territory, been there. Right. So basically, this two-pronged attack is our international or South African early career scientists who were either thinking about going to university to study marine biology or a relevant subject, oceanography, environmental science, ecology, or they've perhaps just done their undergrad and they're thinking about moving into doing honours or masters or PhD level, and they want to get some hands-on experience of that fantastic knowledge that they've just learned at university, but now they want to apply those skills and knowledge and learn some new skills and knowledge by working in the field or training in the field, and working alongside us guys at CapeRadd. And we talk them through in a module-based field course, right from the conception and design of the projects through to the application of the skills and the data collection in the field, and then through to the data analysis at the end of the process. So we give them this whole sort of overview of the scientific process, which a marine biologist sort of runs the data collection and the projects by. And then like I say, we try to sort of make it as inclusive as possible and get as many people involved as possible and create a bit more awareness in marine science and conservation. So to do this, we designed these citizen science initiatives where anyone, families, experienced scuba divers, free divers, snorkelers, people on holiday, people who live in Cape Town, they can come along and join us, learn a little bit more about this amazing ecosystem and this amazing region that we're based in False Bay in the peninsula, and then get in the water with us, and they actually get in there with a pencil and pad and start making notes and collecting data on the fish in the water with us. And that goes towards a large database for citizen science, which then can give us data for things like abundance of species, diversity of species, and a number of different projects that we're running. We've got a new project coming soon, hot off the press, called Sharks Fin Spotter. Nearly got the name wrong there. But Fin Spotter is going to be a fantastic platform for people around the Western Cape to monitor the endemic shark species that we have here through a process of photo ID. So we're just working on that at the moment. Dylan's working on that as we speak, and that'll be coming out soon. And that's an amazing platform because the whole point of citizen science is to engage the public, to get them to care and think about marine conservation and what's going on, but also to collect data for worthwhile research projects. So this is hopefully going to allow the people going out there taking photos of these benthic sharks every free dive and snorkel and scuba dive. And it's going to give them a purpose and a real dive objective to go out, take these photos, upload them onto our FinSpotter site and contribute towards a research project, which is going to look at not only general distribution and sort of numbers of these sharks, but we can, with photo ID and mark recapture techniques, we can look at sort of how proximity of sharks and the closeness relationships between certain individuals, individual distribution and migration movements. So it's quite an exciting project. Hopefully we get that out soon for people to get involved in.
Fantastic, man. It's so interesting. You know, I'm in a slightly different space in that, you know, most of my work is terrestrial based and, you know, at the same time involved in tourism. And what we're seeing from the clients that we're hosting is, you know, people are wanting to get involved in conservation, even if they're not necessarily conservationists. And instead of sitting on a safari vehicle or participating in a bushwalk, people are actually wanting to get involved in conservation initiatives. And that's been amazing to see kind of on the terrestrial side of things as well. So big up to you guys. I think it's such a cool idea in terms of, you know, creating something where, you know, you've got this ecotourism model, but, you know, people are actually able to contribute as well. These people who, you know, come onto this course, specifically the scientists, you're obviously in contact with them. Like you say, you've created a database, and are they able to feed you data from, you know, the work that they do, or is your work primarily in the False Bay Peninsula?
Yeah, so our projects, CapeRadd's research projects, are specifically based in the Western Cape region at the moment. And we sort of offer ourselves as a platform for international collaboration. So there's certain things about this area which are internationally interesting. So, for example, kelp forest scientists. This area is very fascinating for kelp forest scientists and ecologists because around the world you probably hear about the kelp forest distributions decreasing, densities reduced due to grazers of things like sea urchins, and this imbalance in these really delicate ecosystems. And a lot of that is to do with global warming, temperature changes, and not allowing the kelp to sort of distribute as much as it would normally. So in Australia, California, we're seeing this reduction in kelp forests. But in South Africa, a fascinating thing is happening, which is actually the reverse of that, something called coastal cooling. So due to the southeasters, those big, strong trade winds that any Cape Townian will be very accustomed to, they're increasing in length and strength. And this is creating more upwellings on the sort of Atlantic side of things, which is creating this massive upwelling of cold, deep Atlantic water, also inducing huge nutrient cycles as well. And that cold water is sitting right on the coastal region of the area and allowing that cold water to let the distribution of kelp forests spread. So I've only been in Cape Town for 3 years now, or just under 3 years, but 20 years ago, 25 years ago, a lot of people might be familiar with the fact that there was hardly any kelp in False Bay.
No way.
It was all on the Table Bay side of things and up the Namibian coastline or to the border there. And in the last 20, 25 years, that kelp distribution has spread quite rapidly throughout the whole of False Bay and further along eastwards as far as near regions of Agulhas, Cape Agulhas. So quite an interesting phenomenon that's happening in these waters, which brings in international interest and potential collaborations as well. But yeah, most of CapeRadd's research is focused on measuring the biodiversity of the region.
And tell me, I mean, you mentioned kelp forests. You know, for people who are, you know, coming to spend time with you in the water, whether it's a local inexperienced diver or snorkeler, or someone who, you know, is literally a scientist. Again, what makes what makes the False Bay Coast so unique in terms of various dive sites and I guess the biodiversity of this particular area?
Yeah, well, that's it. The biodiversity here is incredible. Like we mentioned earlier, these two ecoregions that we're sort of positioned right in the mixing zone of, the cool waters of the Benguela and the warmer waters of the Gullis, and they drive down the coastlines and sort of clash in this region. It's quite a big region. It's not specifically on the Cape Point. It's sort of from Cape Point through to Agulhas, but we see those strongest contrasts in this area because of the proximity to that cold Atlantic side. And that contrast and those mixings of those currents create an amazing upwellings and nutrient cycles, which allows for lots of biodiversity. And that biodiversity is really interesting to measure. Like I said right at the start, there's over 3,500 endemic species in the area.
Amazing.
Which is because most likely they've specifically adjusted to these conditions in this area. And it's a really fantastic place to get in, see the marine megafauna, the marine big five, the sharks, the whales, the dolphins, the seals, the penguins. But also, as soon as you stick your head under the water here in the Cape, the amount of macroinvertebrates and just other life forms, not the big stuff, but the invertebrates and the corals and the kelps, it's just every inch of the place is covered in life, and it's quite fascinating. And at a first glance, you might just jump in and think, oh, it's pretty. But what we're trying to offer is for people, rather than just throwing people a snorkel and a mask and saying go for a snorkel, we want people to understand what's going on in the water. So when you stick your head in, you understand what's going on with these two kelp species which are working together in a symbiotic relationship, or why this certain fish over here is behaving in this way, or why there's three species that are mixing together in this shoal, and this species doesn't seem to move out of these 10-meter squared areas. And all this kind of interesting little facts, which when you come for a snorkel with CapeRadd, we try and talk you through it, answer questions in the water, and people hopefully take home a bit more of an understanding, a care and a passion for the marine environment.
So it's a real educational process. That's really awesome. It sounds like a fantastic experience. Whether, like I say, you're a seasoned diver or snorkeler, or someone who's just looking to learn a little bit more about, I guess, our backyard. In terms of the other work you're involved in, you guys are conservationists at heart as well, and certainly our oceans are there are many threats to our oceans. In your opinion, with regards to globally and then I guess more locally, what are some of these threats our oceans are facing, and what are some of the initiatives that you guys run at CapeRadd?
Well, I think probably the three major threats, or the main threats that I can think of, are pollution. So this comes in a number of forms. Human waste pollution, as in human effluents, which we all know around Cape Town is a big story at the moment, and water quality. And what that does is creates these sort of unnatural upwellings of nutrients, sort of unbalanced nutrients, which creates all sorts of unequal sort of things going on in the system. Lots of species might thrive in that particular area, which might drive out other species, and so there's a species level thing. But also there's the microplastics waste and the plastic waste into the ocean, which is directly linked with this human effluence as well. There's a lot of research going on at the moment looking at how human effluents and the hormones that are being flushed out into the oceans are now binding with the microplastics issue. So we've got two big major issues, and now they're combining together to make an even worse issue, where these hormones bind very easily to these microplastics and increase the magnitude of them. And then species then start swallowing and digesting these things, creating it to get into the food chain, and then that food chain eventually comes back onto our plates at some point, or affects us in a massive way. So pollution is one of the big problems worldwide. overfishing is still a major problem, and you know, the exploitation of our fishing stocks, that's a very, very big thing in terms of sustainable fishing. Is something that we really need to sort of move towards very, very quickly. You've probably seen a lot of the statistics looking at fish demises of 90% of the fish stocks are now overexploited,
Wow.
which is quite a scary statistic. And then and things like poaching as well come into that, illegal poaching. Yeah, so they're sort of the major threats that I can think of off the top of my head. There was a third one.
We have quite a bit of poaching in. Sorry to interrupt you there. And I was just going to say, we have quite a bit of poaching around our peninsula, don't we, with regards to palamun, crayfish, I guess, to a certain extent. What are some of the issues with regards to poaching that we face in Cape Town specifically?
Yeah, well, abalone is obviously a huge illegal trade going on here, and it's a difficult one because it's a conservation issue. It's a marine conservation issue, of course, directly, but indirectly, it's a socio-economic issue. It's a political issue. It's a very complicated, complex story. The whole thing. But in terms of marine conservation, yeah, it's having a direct effect on the balance in the ecosystem. Abalone is mostly a kelp forest species, and they sort of control a lot of the equilibrium within it because they're one of the main grazing species. And what we've found with the lack of abalone and other grazer species which have been taken away, these different species of smaller corals and sponges are starting to move into those niches which they might not have before. And this could be a negative effect. They might have some positives. It's completely dynamic and always changing. But when you remove any one thing out of an ecosystem, everything's gonna shift and change, and it's gonna make differences. Now, these can have huge knock-on effects down the line, and I guess we're still gonna go down that line because there doesn't seem to be any end to the abalone poaching at the moment. And then the rock lobster story is a really interesting one, because the same thing has happened world over. Australia, California, same thing. They overpoached their lobster, and lobsters feed a lot of them most directly on the urchins. And so when you take away those rock lobster, those urchins start to flourish because they not have any constant predation on them. And those guys, the urchins, are grazing on the kelp, and so that creates this overgrazing effect. And in places like California and Australia, Tasmania, huge urchin barrens are being created because of this imbalance in the ecosystem. And this is one of those big knock-on effects that happens when you mess around with an ecosystem. In South Africa, we've not seen these massive knock-on effects in terms of overgrazing and barrens. Like I say, the kelp forests are distributing and the densities are still strong. But we're on one of those sort of boundaries where it could happen any moment, sort of thing. And it could be a big effect on our ecosystems here. So, yeah, I mean, poaching is a huge issue, and it just messes with the balance of an ecosystem.
Interesting. So certainly plastics, pollution, sustainable fishing, which which is obviously not always enforced, and I guess global warming, as you say, are all massive issues with regards to our current oceans. You guys have there's something called a Mission Blue Champion. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that, if you would enlighten us.
Yeah, so I don't if no one's heard of Mission Blue before. It's an organisation or an initiative set up by Dr. Sylvia Earle, who's a very well-known Nat Geo marine biologist and quite a public figure now in marine conservation. And she set up Mission Blue to go around the world and conserve and try and protect and create awareness for these certain hotspots of biodiversity, or for particular reasons, whether it's unique endemic species, particular areas of economic value, or where the oceans are have economic value to the locals in the area, whether they're particularly prone to being destroyed or have a bounce back rate, a good bounce back rate, so we can measure these different things. And in 2014, there's only 2 of these in South Africa. In 2014, Hermanos and False Bay were both declared hope spots, which essentially means these are very special areas based on these categories and these reasons. And in last year, 2019, CapeRadd became the champions of the hope spot for False Bay. So basically, that means we have the privilege and the task to sort of raise awareness of this area, False Bay, as a hope spot, as this unique, incredible place, and it's now recognised internationally. Well, it's always been recognised internationally, but it just gives you a nice platform to stand on to raise more awareness on a bigger scale, and hopefully create more conservation, more education in the area.
That's awesome. I guess in your field, with regards to research, it's just it's so important. And why is research so important, would you say, to a marine conservationist?
Well, research is basically the spearhead of conservation. Research is the what, the whys, the wheres, the whens, the hows. And without that information, you can't protect something you don't understand or know about. So I guess the research side of it is to try and gain that understanding of the particular ecosystem or the species or whatever you're studying. And once you've got that understanding, you have a base then to sort of say, right, well, this looks reasonably stable. We've looked at it for this long, or this is historic data and it's crashed incredibly, or it's going very negative, or perhaps something's having a bounce back. And by using this data, we can then decide on management for this and legislation. And the research that is done, peer-reviewed research, directly instigates legislation for marine protected areas, things like species endangered lists. It's very important to create that initial standpoint so we can decide what is more important to be protected or what is more urgent, and then how to go about protecting it. Because you could sort of look at a kelp forest and say, well, there's not a lot of it here, so we need to protect it. But if you don't understand the ins and outs and the dynamics and the symbiosis of what's going on in there, then what you do, it might have a negative effect and a knock-on effect.
Absolutely.
So it's research is basically getting the understanding of what you're dealing with, and then it can go on to things like legislation and management and conservation.
And, Mike, we're celebrating World Ocean Day. I think it's on the 8th. I think it's on Monday, actually. And this year's theme is innovation for a sustainable ocean. What does this mean for you and you guys at CapeRadd?
So, World Oceans Day, fantastic platform, again, to spread knowledge and education and in marine conservation. We are doing a thing, and you'll be impressed because I've written it down somewhere so I don't get it wrong on one of my pieces of paper. We're doing a World Ocean Challenge for World Oceans Day. It's an official one. It's on the World Oceans Day website. And what we're trying to do is spread a little bit of awareness locally as well as on the international stage. So our little challenge is very simple, 3 easy steps. You've got to wear blue, easy. Take a picture of yourself wearing blue, and then sign the petition for the 30 by 30. So this year's push is really to get a petition signed for 30 by 30, which is we want 30% of the ocean under protection by legislation by 2030. So each decade they try and push more and more protection in the ocean. Just to give you a bit of a taste, I think at the minute only about 10% of the world's oceans are under protection. So it's a
Interesting.
big challenge.
Big
it's a big process to go through. But I think the world is slowly waking up to the facts of conservation and human effects on the balance in the world. And so hopefully, yeah, this is just a nice little way to promote World Oceans Day and spread the word. And then obviously, if we can get as many people signing that petition as possible, then we can then, again, it all goes back to pushing it through to legislation and getting that management involved.
Awesome. That's such an incredible initiative. I see Sean already asking if we can put up a link for the petition. We have put up a link in my bio to the World Ocean Day, and then also a link in Blackbean to CapeRadd if you guys want to find out more information. And I think if you visit the CapeRadd website, you can also get involved there. Where can people sign the petition? It should be on the website, right?
Yeah, there's a link in CapeRadd bio on our Instagram bio, which will take you through to the World Ocean Day website. And then it's dead easy. You just click on the start petition, sign petition, and done, 5 minutes. And then, yeah, if you can spread the word, share the links, encourage as many people as you can to sign it. It doesn't have to be done on the 8th. It can be done anytime up to the 8th, and even probably past the 8th. I'm not sure. But yeah. That's the story.
Awesome. No, great. And Sean, thanks for asking. I mean, again, it's platforms like these where, we try and encourage people like yourselves to act. So thank you for showing an interest. I think before we let you go, Mike, again, time goes so quickly, but it'll be really nice just to hear a little bit more. And maybe, I know you're involved in so many different conservation initiatives, but maybe you could just highlight, a couple that stand out, or maybe a couple that you're currently busy with at CapeRadd, and we can get a slightly better understanding. We've learned a little bit about your ecotourism model and providing a platform for young budding scientists as well. But some of the other conservation, I know you guys do a lot of collaboration as well. But some of the other initiatives you're involved with would be great to touch on if that's possible.
Yeah. So. I think one of our main projects is using both our research that we do with the students and independently on our field courses, and also incorporating or separately using the citizen science data from those snorkels. And what people are collecting there is fish sightings. And these fish sightings are essentially giving us a distribution map of where we're seeing certain fish, and we're also trying to include abundance in there, so how many of these fish there are. And this data is quite simple to collect and really effective, because we can look at things like marine protection areas efficiency. So on the Cape Peninsula, we've got a number of no-take zones for marine protected areas, and we could, by monitoring and sampling inside these areas and outside of these areas, we can look at whether these marine protected areas are efficiently supplementing the surrounding areas. So the idea of a marine protected area is to protect the biodiversity and allow that biodiversity to spread and supplement the surrounding areas, which are potentially being fished or damaged through different activities. And so, yeah, we can look at whether diversity and abundance is changing through there. But this kind of research takes sort of long-term data sets where you need to sort of get a few years decent data to be able to tell the story. So that's one of our projects. Also, we are getting involved in the kelp distribution and density research. So this involves, you had a picture before of within the kelp. We're basically measuring kelp fronds at the surface. There you go. We're measuring those kelp fronds and we're counting them using various sampling techniques. And then we're also looking at, so that's looking at density and distribution. And then we go on to scuba and we drop down into the bottom of the kelp forest to the kelp forest floor. And we're then counting juvenile kelps and the recruitment of kelps and the number of urchins, which are obviously grazing and feeding on these kelps, and looking at the balance between those. So hopefully this kind of data over a long-term period will be able to tell us, like I say, those places like California, Australia, who are struggling with kelp forest barrens and things, whether we're sort of getting onto the verge of this possibility here, or the health of our kelp forests in general. And like I say, we've got another project coming through where we're looking at those endemic shark species inside the kelp as well, and looking at their distribution, their abundance, and also those links between certain individuals, which is going to be really exciting. So using some really cool technology, we should be able to ID those through photos from everyone who's been scuba diving or snorkeling, and everyone can get involved in that data research.
That's awesome. I mean, we were chatting about it earlier. Both of us are involved in, I guess, in the tourism space as well. And at CapeRadd, you alluded to the fact that you rely on working with people and I guess taking them diving and experiencing them and showcasing false bay to them in terms of bringing in a bit of revenue. How are you guys managing, obviously, with the COVID-19 crisis, and how can people help you? Because obviously, they can't come dive with you currently. If you could share a little bit more on that, it'd be great.
Yeah, so like I say, the ecotourism business plan doesn't work when there's no tourism. So at the minute, obviously we're not in the water, we're not allowed in the water, we're not allowed to dive, we're not allowed to take people diving. So we're using this time to do a number of things. First of all, we've really tried to put out some content on our YouTube channel. So CapeRadd YouTube channel, we've got some mixture of videos. Some of it is great for early career scientists looking to sort of develop new skills in this downtime. So if you want to look at your statistical analysis workshops or particular biological knowledge presentations that we've got up there. We've also got some fun videos and some videos of us in the field and what we do. So trying to come up with content, and we're trying to keep it free content so anyone can get on there and get involved and learn as much as they want about CapeRadd, but also about marine biology in general. And we're also coming up and designing new projects like this benthic shark project, which hopefully will be launched very soon. And that will allow anyone who's had photos from the past to start uploading their photos. So they don't need to go for a dive and upload fresh photos. They can put any photo up, and that'll keep them busy for a while. It'll keep us busy for a while. And yeah, just writing new material for our course, researching new projects, writing up the starts of projects,
yes,
and statistical analysis and all the boring stuff that scientists have to do as well.
Oh, well, good for you guys. I guess, like a lot of organizations, just doing what one can and I guess capitalizing on the time that we have at the moment. There was a question that came through with regards to, involving the government. Is the local government involved at all with regards to CapeRadd, either on an administrative or collaborative capacity? That question came from Land Travel.
Yeah, so we collaborate. There's a few. SAMBI have a citizen science open data set called what's it called? Fish Key. Oh, I can't remember the name of it now. But SAMBI have got this open source data set where you can upload data or photos to their collaborative data set. So we contribute towards that data set. There's a couple of other different government-based data sets that we contribute to with our data. But in terms of funding and control and sort of management and that side of things, we're completely independent of the government. So we are an individual PTY. So yeah, we're not involved in that sense with the government.
And in terms of, obviously there is a huge educational element here. I'm sure there's, one or two people who have, logged on and joined the conversation who are young, aspiring marine biologists. could you give, those individuals some advice with regards to, following a similar road to the road you've walked, or the ocean you've swum, and give them an idea of how you got to where you are today, and maybe a little bit of advice?
Well, yeah. So, my route, so marine science, marine biology is a marine science, and so you do need to be a scientist, which means there is a lot of study involved. There's a lot of academic side. So it's not all swimming with sharks and messing around in kelp forests, unfortunately. So one of the first pieces of advice I always give is be ready for that. So, it's you do get fantastic opportunities. You do get to do awesome stuff on field expeditions. But I generally say for most people it's 70-30 or 80-20 in terms of desk work, sort of lab stuff, and the actual field work side of things. So that's something to bear in mind. But it shouldn't deter you, it shouldn't put you off. It is a great job. Also, don't do it for economic reasons, but do it for your passion, do it for your interest. And my route was, I did my undergrad in the UK, in the Bangor University. I then took a few years out, and I travelled came to Cape Town for a few months, and then I ended up going to Australia and worked on the Great Barrier Reef for a while, helping out marine biologist group there. But as an assistant, I'd only done undergrad. So, and then I decided, I wanted to sort of get more involved. So I came back to South Africa and did my postgrad through Pretoria University, and spent a lot of time doing there. And then, I just built on my experience over the years. So as well as the academic side, going to university, it's fantastic to have scuba diving skills, free diving skills, be comfortable in the water, on boats, skipper skills. And you might not always use these specific skills and these dive skills, but it's what we say at CapeRadd is we try and teach early career scientists their toolbox. So not everyone's going to be scuba diving and doing sampling skills and techniques that we train, but it's fantastic as a scientist to understand the pros and the cons of these kinds of techniques and what people in the field are actually doing to collect that data, and the entire process of science from conception through to write-up and publication. So I think it's important to know the whole story, and not just about getting in for a scuba dive and messing around in the kelp. But there's lots of different routes. You don't have to be pure academic. You can be a scientific communicator. You can be a scientific educator. If you've not been to university and done science strictly, or marine science, or anything specific, if you've perhaps done journalism or videography or photography, just like what I gather you do, James, you've used your photography and videography skills set to promote conservation. And that's another fantastic and really important part of marine conservation as well. So if you've got those skills, definitely get involved with using them. But yeah, there's lots of different routes into marine science and marine conservation. You just kind of have to be a little bit resourceful and take a bit of initiative, and sometimes come at it with a different angle.
No, well, awesome. And Mike, it's been such a pleasure chatting to you today. I know we had some gremlins with regards to the comms, but I'm glad we pushed through. I would love to
change my life.
Yeah, I feel you. I would love to come connect with you, when I'm back in Cape Town and I'm allowed to possibly get in the water with you and your team, and I'd love to learn more about, our coast and obviously what lies beneath the water as well. And I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for all the great work that you're doing. If you guys want to learn more about CapeRadd and what they offer from a tourism point of view, as well as their conservation initiatives, go check out their Instagram page. We've put a link on our Blackbean page as well. And if you want to get involved in the petition for the World Ocean Day, which is on Monday next week, that link is in my bio as well. And again, Mike, look forward to meeting with you in person, bud, when this virus is over, and learning from you guys. So thanks again for your time today.
Cool, man. Cheers. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the chat. It's been good.
Cheers, buddy. Go well.